Welcome back to the Opposition Podcast, episode 22. I know you're all asking what I ask every single week is why is Avi so much more handsome than Rukshan?
Is that some type of discrimination? Perhaps?
Yes, 100%.
I don't know if you're allowed to say those kind of things anymore.
100%.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back, guys, to the podcast, the show, the Opposition Podcast. And you'll notice we've actually had a glitch-free introduction, so I hope it's gone all smooth. I think Avi is becoming very, very good at the tech side of things. So well done, Avi, on having a smooth intro today without too many issues.
Rukshan, I'm being told that you need to put up your mic slightly, so
there you go. On. So it's my fault. Is
all right, not
better?
Too loud, not too. Calm down. Now, some of the feedback we've received lately is that me being a Zionist and you being my puppet, I've been controlling too much. So I'm going to need you to introduce this week's guest and topic so that nobody can say that I'm controlling today's conversation, but do exactly as I told you before.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're just exactly telling me what to do right now, so it kind of defeats the purpose of what you're doing. But look, guys, we have a very special guest today from the halls of power, I guess, from Canberra, Federal Senator Alex Antic from the Liberal Party Coalition. Thank you, Senator, for joining us. And we're going to be talking about all things to do with the misinformation, disinformation bill, 1984 style censorship, in my words, that we're going to be facing if I think it's being introduced tomorrow, isn't it, Senator? And thank you for joining us on the show.
Well, I hope it's not being introduced tomorrow because I'm not there and Parliament's not sitting, so it won't be. It won't be.
Alex, get used to it. Rukshan just makes shit up as he goes.
Well, I was more interested actually in the concept of you not having glitches. So if you want to introduce someone that can almost certainly guarantee some tech glitches, well done. I'm here. I'm ready. The mic won't work. The light will fall on me. So I'm ready to fill that dream. But look, this is actually, it's quite ironic, isn't it, doing these sorts of podcasts on a platform that if this bill passes, I mean, probably all of this will be misinformation at some point. So we better get in while we can, I guess. It's pretty frightening stuff. We had an early version of this last year and it got swamped with submissions. The minister got swamped with submissions, 24,000, I think, and nobody writes a submission unless they hate it. So you can guarantee that most of those were, don't do it, this is awful. And we're in that process again now. The Economics Committee is taking submissions. So we should actually put up a link at some point so people can make a submission. I'm happy to give you those at some point later on. But
is there an easy way for people to find it? So if people are looking, what's the easiest way for them to find it?
Probably combating misinfo. If you Google combating misinformation, committee submission would probably do it and take you to one of the parliamentary links and it tells you the email address and all the information. So get in there and tell them what you think because this is going to be bad. If this passes, free speech is dead in this country. Let's not put a finer point on it. That is the fact.
So what is the bill? If you can break it down for the average person at home watching this, break it down.
So the concept is going to be that the Act will, there are a number of different parts, but the guts of it is it'll provide a statutory definition for misinformation and disinformation, two words that barely existed 5 years ago. And effectively what they will be is anything online, it relates to online content, by the way, like social media platforms, podcasts like this, you name it. And what it'll be, though, is the definition is anything that is reasonably demonstrating false and misleading assertions that cause serious harm. So it goes on and specifies what sort of serious harm means. It means things like matters that are referred to or conveyed that talk about public health that might have serious harm as to the economic future of this country, racial vilification, physical threats, anything online that covers any of those and is considered to be serious harm and is wrong, basically. Now, the question then becomes who decides what's wrong, who decides what's right. And basically, ACMA, which is the media authority, the statutory body, will have sweeping powers to set standards, set codes to determine what is and isn't true, and then to enforce a series of penalties. And platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and others could be in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not more, in civil penalties if they project and show content that is misinformation and disinformation. That's it in a nutshell. There's obviously a fair bit more to it than that, but basically, it'll be a ministry of truth. That's what we're calling it. That's what I'm calling it. The minister who's sitting there has a lot of powers as well on top of that to make directions. So we're giving the government the power to tell us what's right.
So, in all likeliness, will it get through? Just lay it on us.
Well, I think that ultimately will come down to a heap of crossbench.
What's your prediction?
In the Senate. I hope it doesn't. I think I'm seeing.
We all hope it doesn't. How do you feel?
Yeah, I don't know, because it depends on the view taken by the likes of Senator.
Look, Sean, help us out here. He's not giving us anything.
I actually don't know. I hope not.
You
I
genuinely don't know. You don't.
I genuinely don't know. I genuinely don't know. My hope is.
If you had to bet.
If I had to bet, I have a terrible feeling this will pass.
That's what it feels like, definitely. Like some version of it or something will pass.
Yeah, or an amended version. Yeah,
exactly. But it's very confusing, a lot of this, I think, for many Australians to understand and wrap their minds around this. So what's the difference from, a few months ago, last year, when they introduced this initially for consultation? What's the difference that's happened to this new version that's kind of been put before Parliament?
Well, I mean, the government are saying it's better. It's not. It's actually, in many respects, worse. What they have done, though, is added this threshold test of serious harm. Prior to that, and that's probably the main difference, but prior to that, it was effectively just a definition of misinformation, and that was it. Now it's got to pass that threshold. So, the concept would be, and the government will argue, that if you, make a statement online about, let's say ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine online, and it doesn't have a significant reach, or it doesn't, it's not really, persuasive, then it won't reach that threshold. But of course, that'll be a matter for courts, and that'll be a matter for ACMA. It'll be a matter of interpretation as to what serious harm actually is. And you're taking really a layer out of free speech by doing that. You're giving other people, whoever it may end up being, the government, ACMA, the courts, tribunals, whoever it is, the ability to say, well, that's wrong and that's right. And let's have a think about what happened during COVID. I mean, a lot of the stuff that was talked about turned out to be absolutely true when it was deemed to be wrong at the time. I did a Freedom of Information request of the Department of Home Affairs around about 18 months ago, and it showed that the Department of Home Affairs was actually using a foreign company to sift through social media posts of Australians and identify posts that might fit the category of so-called misinformation. And when they found them, they were referring them to the social media companies like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter to say, well, are these people breaching your standards, your codes, your own personal, the media company's own personal principles? And then they would pull the post down. And there were things in there that were just simply making fun of politicians. There were things in there about masks don't work, which of course we now know is true. We didn't know at the time, but we knew it then. And all sorts of other things. That the injections don't stop transmission. We knew that those sort of posts were pulled down. So the government was sort of itching to do this back then. And it was all done in the name of safety. And it was all done under the guise of a framework that was set up to combat terrorism. So, I mean, the government's itching to tell people what they can and can't say. It has been for a fairly long period of time online.
A good question come up on screen now is, will the mainstream media, printed news, be held to the same standard as the independents?
Yeah, no, they won't. So that's the major flag bearer of this legislation, that there are exceptions. There are exceptions for things like matters of artistic use, so political cartoons, things that are meant to be satire, parody, but also there's
so basically all of Rukshan's commentary. The guy's a joke.
Well, I mean, I often feel that might be the way you get around it, is just by doing everything like a stand-up routine, and then you move on.
If you look at Twitter, they're always mocking him. I reckon he has a good case.
Yeah, that's right.
But I was going to say, Senator Antic, so initially before government communicate, like government messaging and advertisements and that kind of thing was protected under this, but now it's like under the same type of scrutiny as everything else. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, that's right. Well, just get back to the question. I think the question was about mainstream news, and so that will be completely excluded. Anything from the professional news content they're calling it, which is radio, print, newspapers, TV. If you think about what's actually happened here, what's really happened is prior to social media getting a real foothold and becoming a real force, changing the media landscape, you had a media that was fairly easily corralled. You would have maybe 4 or 5 different outlets that had a major reach. Now that's not the case. And the government and the establishment no longer can control the message. And, you guys showed that probably as well as anybody in the country during COVID. I mean, the sort of reporting you were doing was well outside the parameters of what we were hearing on the mainstream news. And you turned out to be right, by the way. So that is no longer controllable, and ultimately there is a global push to try to shut this down. The populist movements out there, the sort of movements that that get this bloke elected and Nigel Farage elected, and the sort of the Brexit type movements rely on this sort of social media, and the establishment doesn't like it. It's as simple as that.
For those that couldn't see the photo behind you, you're just showing off now. You're just one-upping Senator Babette. So
that seems
just
to be a photo
maybe
of me
bring it
as
in front of the
45th President
camera.
of the United States.
Can we see that?
Yeah.
Can everyone?
That's not AI, is it? It's not AI. It's actually real.
I say to you, try and get AI to do that, and you will get a very, very, very sharp surprise.
Look at that! What a show off!
Listen,
you're one of the good guys in Parliament. I'll give you that. But I do have a bone to pick. You are part of the Liberal Party, and as much as I'm happier with the Liberal Party these days than I was before the election, I've got to say the e-safety commissioner, Karen, is kind of a Liberal creation, and I don't think Dutton's going any softer on it. He's kind of encouraging Karen, this little tyrant wannabe, this, World Economic Forum. She literally is from America, comes here with her right to freedom of speech in America, comes here and then travels every year to Davos to kind of build this idea of, censoring Australians. So how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you're against it.
I mean, look, I'll say one of the very good things about the party is it allows people to have their own views on these sorts of things and vote accordingly. And I mean, I do it routinely, and I'm very grateful to be able to do that. One of the problems I have is not so much necessarily with the person as it is with simply the framework. I mean, I just don't like the idea of censorship online. I think there's got to be limits. There's got to be limits to it. We can't have people running around saying go out and commit crimes and whatever. But the whole concept of having e-safety as it is, I think, is really dangerous. And that doesn't mean that all the usual arguments about kids online and safety online and all that sort of stuff. But we hear these arguments from people about child safety online at the same time as they're paying zero interest to or attention to some of the other things that affect kids, which might even be more virulent, like some of the radical gender theory that's going on in schools and libraries and so forth. So it's not really an issue for me of the person, whoever holds the office. I'm really, really uncomfortable with the concept of, stopping kids from being online until a certain age. That, to me, that's the parent's role. It's another example of people taking power away from the family and the parent and giving it to the state. I just don't like it inherently. And the same would be true with online censorship. And I'm worried about the fact that it's always dressed up in save the children type language. I think that's, it's a bit like we used to get with, with the sort of prior to 9 or just after 9/11 when the, a lot of the domestic terrorism laws in the United States were used to sort of spy on American citizens. So I just think we've got to be really careful with those sorts of things. So for me, it's really about the legislative framework more than it is about the individual.
Do you take up this issue with, I guess, the heads of the Liberal Party? Have you ever spoken to Dutton about his position with the e-safety commission? I feel like he's out of touch with the average Liberal, even not even the average Aussie? Like, why does he keep promising to empower this little tyrant?
Well, look, I actually haven't not about this. I think, I mean, this issue now of the misinformation bill will now give another reason to raise it. I mean, there's so much going on any one given time that this particular issue of the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner hasn't really come up. I mean, I have my views on it during Senate estimates, where I like to explore these things, but it's there hasn't been something that's really come before the party room or something that's required to go knocking on the door. Look, I don't. Everyone's got their own views about it. I think on the surface, I can see why people, want to have these sorts of powers because they're couched in, as I said, protecting children, protecting people from all sorts of terrible stuff. But we've got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, regardless of whether it's ACMA having these powers, whether it's the E-Safety Commissioner having these powers, or whoever it may be. And so, look, there are plenty of people, and I think you'll find plenty of people specifically inside the Liberal Party who are very, very, very worried about the misinformation, disinformation bill. And I'm hopeful that we will oppose it as a collective.
Yeah, I think you are working as a team on that bill. I'm seeing that message come across from the entire Liberal Party. But you just reminded me about Saki Karen, so I just thought I'd better check the petition.
Senator Antics. So I was talking about before, the government's no longer exempt under this new framework that they've proposed for this, right?
Yeah.
So how does that? Do you think that actually impacts political discourse as well? Is there a way that perhaps this could be used to make people disengage from certain arguments, even for politicians who might argue against a certain position?
Well, I mean, government shouldn't. I mean, if they're going to apply this to everyone, it should be applied to everyone. I mean,
I definitely agree with that.
And that would apply to professional news contents to some of the most egregious, users of misinformation out there. But I mean, if you look at the irony of all of this, that some of the information they use in their explanatory material they put out with the bill, it was actually misinformation. One of the examples they used to demonstrate serious harm as it related to public health was the assertion that people were sharing Donald Trump's statement that people should inject bleach during COVID, which of course has been widely debunked by everyone, including Snopes. And so, only the Labor government here could be using misinformation to plead the case in favour of misinformation.
I feel like I want them to pass it for a day so that we can take them to court on that, and then for it to be repealed just once they all get locked up for it.
No one would ever be able to speak in Parliament again. It would be that serious.
Yeah, but so when you're talking about that bill, though, of course, parliamentary privilege would still apply. You can say whatever you want, anyways.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, that would trump all of it. No, I think what they're talking about is government messaging. So, it might be something from the Department of Home Affairs or the Health Department or whatever. It'd be very interesting. But, of course, it relates specifically to digital content providers. So it really would relate to their website or, it's really designed to deal specifically with digital content.
Well, it's, I think, was this today? It's yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
Dr. Nick Coatsworth,
Nick Coatsworth. What's your reaction to I guess what he's saying? It's probably no surprise, but what's your reaction to him coming out against it?
Well, I'm grateful. I mean, I think he was a steady hand. Eventually, during COVID, I think he said a lot of really.
I like how you snuck in that word eventually.
Well, everyone's on a journey. I mean, look, I would say if you ask even if you ask me, the person that I am now compared to the person I was 5 years ago pre-COVID would have very, very different views about a whole range of subjects. I got to say, I don't know if anyone else is the same, but what about a wake-up call that that period was? So I think this is a really good statement. I mean, Nick's got a fair bit to say because he's seen the machine from the inside. He knows how the bureaucracy works. He knows how the players work. So I think it's a big statement for someone like that. I think it's a really important statement for someone of his caliber to come out and say no. And the hope, back to Rukshan's question about will it pass, the hope is that as the days go on, that sort of momentum will build. And of course, in contravention of that, the Labor government has provided 7 days. We're probably down to about 4 left for submissions. And the report that those submissions are informing, the Senate committee report, I always switch off when politicians talk about committees. So just bear with me for 30 seconds till I bore myself. But,
Most people just shut off when politicians talk.
Talk generally, right? That's right. Yeah. So fair enough. I agree. But the report will then come out at the end of November, and then this bill will be jammed through, no doubt, at the start of December. The idea being that as people work out what's going on, word spreads. You know, that's what happened with The Voice. Word spread. It went to the footy clubs. It went to the town halls, and people started talking about it. They want to get this through as quick as possible. That's what they did with digital ID, by the way. The digital ID legislation went through without any debate. It was they call it guillotined through the Senate. It was put up, voted on, and moved on. So you could, I don't know if that'll happen with this, but you can guarantee they won't want to talk about it because the more you talk about it, the more you find out, the more you don't like.
So the only chance people have is what was the deadline? Did you say for submissions?
Yeah, I think there are only about 3 or 4 days left, so people should get on with it on the weekend or tomorrow if they can. And again, it doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be 20 pages. It could be a couple of paragraphs, but just get on until the committee people will, register those and.
What's the rules with submissions for people that have never filed a submission before for anything?
Well, they're emailed in, so there's not really any rules. They're all different types. Normally you'd spell out what you're talking about, why you disagree, and on what grounds, and that's about it. That's all you need to say. But the numbers are going to be important. If ultimately there are the same sort of numbers that people that went through and put in submissions about the original draft from last year, they call it an exposure draft, then I think that's pretty telling. And it'll be the sort of thing that the crossbenchers will need to stand up and take notice of, because they will be the ones that decide this. The Greens presumably will just support it because the left of politics now just, loves big pharma and censorship and the corporate sector and, whatever. So they will presumably support it. Labor obviously will. It's going to come down to those four to six in the middle.
Well, I'll tell you this. I know Daniel's watching. So, Daniel, if you can put a link, he's our web guy. If you could put a link on killthebill.com.au. So, killthebill.com.au has kind of all the articles that are associated to this particular misinformation bill. So, any stories related to it. But if we can chuck in there in the description there at the top a link to where people can actually make the submissions, that'll help the audience out. So guys, after this podcast is done, I'm sure he'll have it done in like about 5 minutes. You're going to have to not post for 5 minutes, Daniel. No comments. I'm going to block any comments you make. If you can get that link in there so people can file those submissions, I think it's super important. Because otherwise, what are we going to do when Rukshan's not allowed to say anything because not a word of truth comes out of this guy?
Well, definitely back to the story about the media. Like recently we had ABC being caught out spreading misinformation and lies. This is our public broadcaster, right? And they're not under scrutiny, but I'm pretty sure independents like us and alternative media will be under the thumb of these type of laws. So it is very important that we actually fight against this and ensure that either it's a level playing field, which I don't think it will be, or it's just scrapped in its totality, because I do feel like they are coming after alternative media like us and the everyday person by going after social media. Now, I know it doesn't target individual users per se, is what I've seen in the reporting.
That's what they say.
More than likely, these platforms will be more than happy to enforce some type of censorship on users, especially platforms like Facebook and so on. And the reverse of that is, of course, that they potentially will go after platforms like X and try to use some of these laws against them to stifle the fact that we are getting more access to freedom to talk about topics that we don't necessarily get to on other platforms. So, whichever way we look at this, you can see that the government can actually use this to their advantage against just the fact that we have sensible free speech and discussions that we need to have. And I think Nick Coatsworth, his opinion was the fact that, you need to have robust debate around health issues, particularly during a crisis, because that's how you actually, get solutions that might actually, we saw what happened, like you said, Senator, like a couple of years ago when there wasn't that robust debate. And today we're finding out that a lot of the things that they silenced was actually the truth. So, to think that the government can have even more control over that is quite frightening. And I think a lot of Australians are unaware of the power that they're about to wield, because this is really going to define our future, because everything is online, communications is online. we work online, and touches all facets of our life in that sense. So I think it's a defining piece of legislation or laws that might change, that impacts all of us in ways that we can't even imagine today.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, really, if this bill passes, freedom of speech is dead in Australia. It's as simple as that. It's as serious as that. I mean, you're right about it mainly affecting platforms, but of course, the big platforms, in many ways, are equipped to deal with this because they have big compliance departments. So it's much easier for Facebook to do whatever it does in order to take the steps it needs for compliance. ACMA will have a whole host of other powers as well. Powers to seek documents, powers to ask for information from the platforms. I mean, the stuff we've talked about is merely scratching the surface. There are huge powers that go to the media authority if this passes, but it does also affect the individual as well. So individual podcasters will be subject to this. I will be as well. I mean, I have a podcast as well, so I'm in the same boat. And ultimately, the freezing effect, though, on the big platforms, why would they take any risk with anything, with a fine or sanctions or an investigative session where the authorities picking through their documents? Why would they do that? Their simple answer will be just to stick to the script, stick to the narrative, stick to the commonly accepted thing, which was injections are great, masks are great, and particularly, as Nick says, in health, it's critical. I mean, it used to be the way health was done.
Now, just
the communications minister, she actually, or not she, but whoever it is at any given time, will they actually have powers to expand on whatever's being put through here, or is it limited to whatever gets through?
Just to answer Richie's comment there, the comments are coming from Facebook, YouTube, and X at the moment, while we legally still can. Sorry, keep going.
Nice. Yeah, so the minister does have some extra powers. There are some powers in there to, by regulation, they'll be able to make, directions about whether other groups might be available to be exempt. So, it might well be. I mean, I was trying to think of an example the other day as I was reading the Act as to what that might look like, but presumably it might be that the minister might be able to say, all right, well, all groups that relate to, a particular topic are exempt from this as well. Seems pretty unlikely, but they can also make directions as to the content of, the codes and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of power with the minister as well. And of course, the other thing to bear in mind about this is once these amendments are bricked in, it's not that difficult then to amend legislation if you've got the numbers. To add further powers. That's what happened with COVID. Here in South Australia, the Public Health Act was just amended. It was already an instrument that existed. It was amended to sort of basically take all of the power, it's very similar in other states, and just give it to the police commissioner to run the state. So, those things, once the framework is in, are very, very easy to add to.
I just want to point out another comment. I'm the one managing comments because Rukshan's given up on everything. But Avi, stop interrupting Senator Antic and asking him for predictions. I do not appreciate the censorship. I want to say now, while I still have the ability to, I will interrupt whoever and whenever I want. Okay, I reckon we've worked through that one. Let's talk about you mentioned the Liberal Party being a broad what do you call
Church.
it? A broad church. Have you guys in the federal Liberal Party been following the case unfolding here in Victoria in the federal court between John Pizzuto from Labor Liberal or whatever you want to call it, and Moira Deeming, who's actually a Conservative? So I'm just trying to get you in trouble. Let's line this up.
You're doing well. Thank you for that. Both of you, by the way. Thank you for that. You're both very fine gentlemen for doing that.
Okay, so
I have been following it, actually. I have.
I imagine there's about 1,000. We've been... Rukshan and I have not slept since it started because we're the whole day.
I've actually cancelled
the transcript every night. I know.
I've cancelled my Netflix subscription just to watch.
It is the most entertaining
it's riveting stuff.
show, especially John Pizzuto's Cross. I've spent a lot of days in court, both for myself and others, and I got to say that cross examination has been like amazing. So fun to watch, entertaining. But so I imagine every Liberal's watching this across the country. How are you guys feeling in the capital?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm watching the cross-examination. That is really, by the way, very, very, determined journalism for you to be reading the cross-examination and all sorts for that. So well done for that.
Oh, if you started watching it, you'd understand why.
I've been taking the news excerpts myself, and as you expect. But look, I don't know how everyone is taking it. It hasn't come up in any, discussions with people that I've had, or anything really. I think people, are sort of into the position of, well, the court will decide what it decides. I mean, my view from the very beginning, by the way, was that Moira didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I don't see what she did wrong, and I never did, and I talked about it in Parliament. Actually, it's on the record. So for me, it's all a bit of a sideshow, sadly, and we'll see what comes of it.
Oh no, I thought it was a sideshow. It is the main show. Rukshan, what do you reckon this week? What have you? What are some of your highlights?
Look, I mean, it's interesting because it really puts the Liberal Party on display in a very unflattering way. Obviously, they're going up against each other in many ways, because you've had members of the Victorian Liberal Party come as witnesses for Moira, and I'm sure we're going to have other people from Pseudo's side come up for him. So it's kind of this drama that's unfolding like a Game of Thrones / home and away style thing, in terms of how people are feeling at a certain time and so on. So it's entertaining, but I think it's also a sad look at the state of affairs, I think personally, for the Liberal Party here in Victoria, because you're seeing the leadership there with John Pseudo, and he's really struggling, I think, to show that he understands just basic concepts around what he said. Forget about what's
I think the word you're looking for is truth.
Truth, yeah, but just how to articulate it and explain it, and he looks incompetent.
The words
whether
are
that's because
telling the truth. I'm just simplifying.
Yeah, whether it's
everything
because he's trying to protect himself and stuff, all this kind of stuff. It could be anything that's happening, and I don't want to be the judge of that. The judge is actually listening, and he will decide. But for outsiders watching it, it doesn't look good, and I think it really puts his leadership into the future as a Liberal Party leader here in Victoria, and potentially as alternative premier, which he likes to keep saying a lot in a lot of his speeches. On thin ice.
The judge, he keeps calling himself the alternative premier.
Even
to the judge.
Yeah, and I actually love. I don't know if you've seen, Avi, how the judge actually interrupts and starts asking his own questions.
The judge is my second favourite lawyer in that room. Her barrister is a gun, and then the judge is number two. And like I thought Pseudo's Casey is doing a good job with the cards he's got. Like he just doesn't have much to work with. It's an insane show that has been super entertaining, and I could feel how uncomfortable the senator is right now.
I feel like I'm just sitting here between a conversation between you guys. So that's
we were really because they did throw. So Pseudo did throw the federal government under the bus early on. What was it? Something about I think Dutton was trying to get involved, and at one point they didn't, because one of her defences was that Jacinta Price, who's also a senator, attended one of those same Let Women Speak rallies, and he kind of shrugged off the fact that the Liberal Party, the federal Liberal Party is. I got the sense that they were trying to portray the federal Liberal Party as the kooky far right. It was getting to that kind of space, and so I was hoping you'll come on here tonight and you'll punch back. I know he's about my height, so you'll be punching down. But you got nothing. You got nothing.
I just haven't been following it that closely. I mean, I'll go back and review all 12 days of it tonight.
No, the last 3 days is like the stuff here. Let's bring up here. So we got Jeff Kennett. So Jeff Kennett's very involved in this one. Do you have any thoughts on Jeff Kennett?
Well,
General thoughts on Jeff
Yeah,
Kennett.
he did a great job digging the state out of debt after the Joan Kerner era. They're my thoughts on Jeff Kennett.
Why do you think he's putting money into this case?
I don't know. It's a very good question. I don't know.
So
I genuinely don't know.
No, he came. So basically, he's in part funding Pseudo's case, and then and it's kind of got embarrassing because Pseudo fed him some of the protected. What do they call it, Rukshan? The documents that was it was within the negotiations of the settlement, which was supposed to be kept private and then confidential, and he fed it to the media and whatever. There was a whole shtick about that, but then Jeff Kennett's gone on today. It's like he's not reading the room, and he's kind of talking about how it's sadly all a waste of court time, and you're thinking, dude, you funded the whole thing. Like,
yeah, I think the responses he's gotten from the public are very telling. I think a lot of those comments are very much a lot of from Liberal Party members in Victoria, perhaps, and Liberal voters just telling him where to go and where John Pseudo should go. So there is a lot of anger out here in the Victorian community when it comes to the perception of the Victorian Liberal Party.
Well, he's been certainly ratioed on this issue, but it's not. This was way less exciting than I was hoping, because I thought we were going to get some inside thing. What the federal.
It's genuinely. I'm only reading what you guys are reading, and it really actually it hasn't seemed to come up in the halls of whatever. I would say power, but it's not really the halls of power. It's more like the.
I think we got to ask the Labor politicians, Avi. I reckon the Labor politicians
that'll be
sitting around in a room drinking champagne, watching the trial.
It is. It has been riveting TV. Even forget about the actual case. It's been riveting. All right, we'll move on to the next issue, which is something that I'm sure you feel strongly about. Let's quickly watch this video. Let me pull it up. Was it this one? Yeah. No, was it this one?
That's from a.
There we go. We'll have
to cater for white people. It's not a ceremony that we've A welcome to country is not a ceremony that we've invented to cater for white people. It's a ceremony we've been doing for 250,000 years plus BC, and the BC stands for before Cook. Prior to colonisation, you could get yourself into a lot of trouble for walking on someone else's lands without being welcomed onto those lands. A welcome to country.
Firstly, I want to know what's your reaction straight up when you saw that?
Well, I mean, I actually wasn't watching the game, but I saw it afterwards. Look, I spoke about this in Parliament.
I think we've got it. That was one of the ones you sent, wasn't it? It's that one, yeah?
Yeah.
Let's have a watch of that before we make you repeat yourself.
Can we just do that like that? Galleys full of people.
It was hardly surprising to see a welcome to country before the opening of the Brisbane GWS AFL match last weekend, but what was surprising was the assertion that the ceremonies have been conducted for 250,000 years BC. That's before Cook, we're now told. Prior to this, we've been told that the history of Aboriginal Australians began about 50 to 60,000 years ago. Now, the idea that AFL fans and players are expected to listen to these ceremonies when all they actually want to do is watch the footy is extraordinary. And one suspects that many viewers who in principle wouldn't have had a problem with these practices are getting as fed up with...
Senator Antic, just resume your seat. Senator Thorpe, you have a point of order?
No, I just wanted to interrupt his speech.
No. Oh, seriously, can we just, 2 minutes, for crying out loud. Senator Antic.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. It tells the story, does it not? But I think Australians are getting fed up with that sort of behaviour in ceremonies just like you and I are, and we haven't arrived at this point overnight. It's come because of years of indulging them at woke community meetings, woke sports matches, woke council meetings.
Senator Antic, could you just resume your seat? Colleagues, we're only asking to listen in peace and quiet for 2 minutes.
Was that her again?
Can we just do that one?
think so.
The gallery's full of people watching the behaviour here.
Might have been a
It's
few
quite
others, I think.
childish.
He should tell her to treat it like a
Senator
strip club
Antic, you
and
have the
respect the
Again,
space.
I think we're making the point very clearly here. It's come because of years of indulging them at woke community meetings, woke sports matches, woke council meetings, and woke weddings. Who knows where else, Mr. Acting Deputy President? First it was 10,000 years, then 20, then 30, now 60. Now it's 250,000 years. And as we've said before, I don't need to be welcome to my own country, and nor do you. What we witnessed before the match last weekend was a product of letting this ride for too long. Have you had enough? I certainly have.
That was actually a decent speech. I got to give it to you.
Yeah.
So that was your reaction in real time. So
That was it. Yeah.
So, firstly, how is it giving a speech like that and then having to deal with people like Lydia Thorpe? Lydia Thorpe.
Well, I mean, let's start with the subject matter there. The actual concept of the welcome to country, I think we're all a bit over it. I mean, frankly, I just, how do you put it more bluntly than that? I just, people turn up to the footy to watch footy. I actually talked about this in my maiden speech, strange thing to do, about how I was tired of sports involving themselves in politics. I don't remember it when I was growing up. I would watch a game of footy because I'd watch a game of footy and I'd go to the movies because I wanted to see a movie, and none of them were political statements. So it's just something that's grated on me for a long time, and I think it is actually more relevant than people think. They want to pass it off as, oh, that's just the culture wars and whatever. But it really stands out for those sorts of occasions. I just think, let's just play footy. Let's not go through this process every single time. And I think people are sick of it. Honestly, I think they are absolutely sick of hearing them before every single everything. I used to sit on the Adelaide City Council. We used to do it 4 times a night in some nights because there were 4 committees and they do it at the beginning of every single one. And that was a decade ago. People are over it. So that was really the point of that whole thing. And also, the 250,000 years thing really just stuck out. I mean, really?
If the misinformation bill passes,
yeah.
Who's going to jail? You or him?
Well, I think we're all going to jail now.
The white people are going to jail. I might be all right.
Does Lydia Thorpe actually believe the nonsense she spews, or does she just do it for attention? It feels like half the time she's literally just doing it to grab the media's attention, to get the headline.
I just would say, and this is going to strike me down for being a heathen on this, but I quite like the vigor. I quite like the commitment. She is just there to, say what she's got to say. Yeah, well, I don't know. Just say what she's got to say, and I do. It really doesn't bother me. That didn't actually bother me, to be honest.
I respect the fact.
I'm just trying to get through 2 minutes.
I respect the fact that she's always willing to garner that attention, and she's always got a plan to get that attention. My question is, do you believe that she truly believes what she's always advocating for, or is she just doing it solely for the attention?
That's a question I can't answer. I think she does. She's got a history of activism, so I assume she believes what she believes, and I don't. I actually, I would say hello and things that, I would be quite comfortable, being quite civil and get on quite well. So it's not, I don't know. I think she is probably convicted, like a conviction politician, I think, So that's good. That's good. Although, the rules of the Senate have to be abided. So, I'm not condoning jumping around and whatever, but by the same token, I think a bit of energy is good. She's not low energy Jeb.
I just feel like she's a walking, talking hypocrite. Like everything about her she's a walking, talking contradiction. That's probably a better term. Like everything about it. The fact that she sits in that chamber and condemns Australia all day and all night, but is willing to be part of that system and get paid by that system, a lot better than I am getting paid to be on the outside of that system, just to me, it strikes as
you're not suggesting there's hypocrisy in politics, are you? Surely you couldn't be saying that.
What do you reckon, Rukshan? You've been quiet tonight. I know we shut you down early on. What do you reckon about Lydia Thorpe? Do you also fancy Lydia Thorpe?
No, look, I agree with what Senator Antic says, that she actually goes out there and says whatever she wants. Like, it takes a bit of courage and guts to do that. But having said that, you're in a place that, you know, expects some type of decorum. And if certain senators behaved in that way, I think there'd be a lot more criticism of them. I think she just get a bit of a pass as well, and she just does whatever she wants. And it is what it is. But I think the rest of us who are watching from afar see that type of behavior and don't necessarily take her message seriously. So, you know, for her activists and people that agree with her, maybe it's great. But I think for the wider audience and general public, they see that type of behavior as just, you know,
does it really take guts, though?
It's not effective.
Do you really think it takes guts to do what she does, or like I don't know?
It's embarrassing. Like to make a fool of yourself takes a bit of courage.
Maybe because you're a bit of an introvert. Like I'm judging it from
you remind me a bit of
exactly. I see myself in that. Like I'm an attention seeker. I'm the middle child of 17 kids. I've always been an attention seeker, so I can see an attention seeker. I know one when I see one. And she is an attention seeker. And I think, is it really courage that makes her come up and say, or is it just like, she's like, oh man, this is going to grab the TV headlines. I'm going to do this. And me personally, I look at her and I think on most issues, there's no one that's that passionate about that many issues. And somehow all her issues are aligned with the far left. Like she's just so passionate about every far left wing issue, the issue of the day, the far leftist issue of the day. She's so passionate about it that she's going to interrupt everything in Parliament, always about it. To me, that's I'm not buying it.
But I mean, maybe she was offended because Senator Antic was questioning, you know, history about.
He's an Indigenous Australian. He deserves these rights there to talk about his 250,000 years of history.
To the broader topic on the Welcome to Country and, you know, some of the points that you raised, I think Senator Pauline Hanson has come under a bit of fire, saying that she'd turn her back
I'll pull it up.
to the Welcome to Country. Do you think more and more Australians are going to start doing these type of acts? And what do you think about people displaying their, you know, maybe their outrage or their displeasure at being witness to some of these type of ceremonies? Do you think that's a healthy direction to go in, or is the more healthier direction to go in that as a society we decide, like, you know, this should be reserved for certain occasions only and not for sports and things?
I think there's a genuine fatigue associated with all of this now. I mean, Aussies are generally pretty easygoing, and I don't think anyone wishes any harm, and I think people are quite happy to pay respect whenever they are called upon to do it. But I just think, you know, the incessant pushing of this is really starting to grate on people. I mean, as an example, you know, that video has just touched a chord. It's, you know, it's sort of been viewed more than most of my diatribe out there, just prattling on about whatever issue of the day. It's like, you know, open mic night, and me yelling at a cloud or whatever I normally do. But you know, like in this instance, people really seem to be quite genuine, and there's been a lot of feedback, and I think it's a widely held view in mainstream Australia that people are just sick of it. I just think that has no bearing on their feelings towards anything other than they're just tired of the relentless ceremony, which feels a bit empty, frankly.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a lot of the discussions and the I guess the distrust or the separation that we had during the Voice to Parliament debate when it comes to these kind of racial lines. And, you know, specifically this individual mentioned white people, and he mentioned kind of like this distinction between Australians, that we're somehow separate, and this is not really kind of about you guys, this is this thing that we do, and forget the dates and all this kind of stuff. It really feels like, you know, a lot of this is about division and reminding us of this division. And, you know, we hear it. I saw some comments, people saying you hear it when you land in a certain in different states, or when you land in Australia. It's not common at all. I don't think I've experienced it anywhere else in the world where in an aeroplane you hear this type of thing. Maybe New Zealand, I've heard something similar. So maybe New Zealand, Australia, there's this happening. But do you think it's actually causing more division the more that we go through? I know you touched on this as well, but increasingly it's a kind of deliberate almost to increase this division amongst Australians on these racial lines.
Yeah, I think you're spot on about the division. I mean, that was the point about The Voice, wasn't it? That the left that were pushing The Voice were really insistent that this was unifying. And I remember I went to the launch of the No campaign, and there were protesters there just hurling abuse, and I thought, well, thanks for the unity. This doesn't feel very unified to me. It feels like this has put a great big wedge between us. And, I think those sorts of, welcomes to country do that as well. They may be unwitting, and I'm not, for a minute having a go at the people that come and do them. I just think as an institution, they are a virtue signal. We don't use that as much anymore as we did 5 years ago, but they really are. There are all sorts of things that could be done culturally. We've got multiple different cultures everywhere in the country, and there'd be all sorts of clever arguments about why this one's unique and why this one's special. But ultimately, people don't go to the footy to see a welcome to country, and they don't have to have one before a board meeting. It is just something that people have started doing because they feel like they have to now, which I think is sad. And if they don't, then immediately you get called a name.
I don't want to go to jail, so we're going to actually have to just fact check you. They've been doing it for 250,000 years. We haven't just started doing it.
That's right. Would have cost you $500,000 that piece of misinformation.
Let me ask you two things. Let's first, Pauline. So, what's your reaction to this? That she's what is she saying? She doubles down and turning her back on the tokenistic welcome to country. Do you support that?
Well, that's up to her. She'd be turning her back a lot.
Don't be diplomatic. What do you support?
Well,
that?
I think she's right. I think they're tokenistic. I think they are. That's the point I'm making. I don't. I don't think there's any other way of putting it. It's not. I don't know about turning it back. I don't know. I wouldn't expect people to turn their back on a whole range of things. I don't think that's necessary. Maybe, but if she wants to do it, that's great. And people look. Ultimately, people are switching off from this, and there'll be the next thing. The thing about the left is there's never. It's like slicing the salami. There's never a matter of virtue that they won't push. There's always the next one. So there will be something else that takes its place. The left are like a virus. They hijack issues. The environment. They hijacked environmental issues. They hijack environmental issues. They hijack issues of race. And the ultimate game, ultimately, is to try to create big government. We saw that with The Voice. It was all about, unification, but in actual fact, it was actually really about building an enormous bureaucracy so, they can brick in jobs for their mates. So, there'll be something else after this, whatever it may be. I don't know. You have to have a different wired brain to me to work out what the left think, but it'll be something else. So, we're just, ultimately, people have just got to, switch it off.
Do you get on with Pauline?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You said you fancy Lydia. Who do you prefer?
I didn't
Lydia?
say that. I did not say that.
That was Rukshan.
Misinformation and disinformation.
Who do you like more, Pauline or Lydia?
I actually like them both. I have to say, I in a strange sort of way.
Bloody politicians! You can't get a straight answer.
I can't. I don't want to. I've got to work with these people. I don't want to say I like one more than the other. But I will say this about Pauline. If she had created a far left party, and she was talking about it, she would have more letters after her name than an alphabet at the moment. She has not got enough credit for what she did. Not promoting her as a whatever.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Just as an observation for an incredible political story, I think. You need to, pay tribute to that. She has, not many people can do it. Not many people did. Don Chipp did it with the Democrats, and the Australian Greens have done it as well. Of course, they have furthered their political tentacles. But
they did as that's like the Greens as a collective, whereas Pauline's been this like one person that's gone through it all in this game.
She's gone through it all.
She's still here, and she's exactly. Yep. She's. If you watch her 20 years ago, she's the same Pauline.
Yes, I think she's another conviction politician. I think ultimately we need conviction politicians. That surely everybody can agree on. We want people to tell us what they think, and I want to know what people think before they go to Parliament, and I want them to do it when they get there. And hopefully, I've done that.
Let me ask you, with Lydia, do you know where she stands on the misinformation?
No, I don't actually. I don't. I hope she is against it. I hope.
Don't you have these conversations?
Not well. This was the second to last day of Parliament, so I haven't had a chance to have these conversations with them yet. But what I would say about these is the thing that I'm fascinated by when it comes to this and the left-leaning, politicians, be they either Greens, Labor, or crossbench, whatever it may be, is this misinformation concept. It affects everybody regardless of your political leanings. I mean, ultimately, and we've seen how this works with social media. I mean, at one point, Twitter was, really a very left-leaning kind of incubator, and it's become a more free speech platform now, if you like. This can be the same with this bill as well. I feel like there's a feeling among the left that this will be a good thing for them, but of course, it will apply to them as much as it will anyone. I don't see how anyone can support the concept of censorship, be you from the conservative or the progressive side of politics. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I hope many of them realise that. And many of the people, I mean, we're talking about the crossbench, Fatima Payman from WA and David Pocock from Canberra, and there are, of course, two from Tasmania.
Fatima's definitely going to want to vote against this bill because I haven't seen an honest thing come out of her mouth. She's going to be locked up like the rest of us.
Well, I hope they all see that this is bad for everybody. It's bad for political discourse. It's bad for whatever. I mean, remember, there are left-leaning podcasts, left-leaning, sites. There are left-leaning people out there talking about their own stuff. And now whether ACMA, to get their sights on them as well, they could. I mean, I just don't think anybody should be voting for
them. The truth is, you don't, honestly, even if your people are in power at the moment, you've got to think about, and that's what I tell the other side all the time. I just imagine your worst political enemy has the power, whatever power you're giving them, and they have the power now. Do you feel safe in the outcome of that? And if the answer is no, then you're an idiot to support it, because one day that your political foe will have it, and you've given it to them.
It's like a sword and a shield, isn't it? I mean, one can become the other very quickly. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we see this time and time again. People who are voting on this should understand that it could be something affecting them very, very quickly.
Yep. But I dare say too many people, sadly, they don't look past the next few weeks, let alone in the distant future where they can imagine that any of this is possible, where it all turns on them.
Yeah.
What else? What else is new in the capital that the Aussies, the average Aussie, needs to know about?
Well, I mean, I think, I'm always reminded of this. The cost of living stuff is the key issue for everybody. It's almost the most prevalent thing for everybody. So I get all of that. We tend to talk about things that aren't related to that because they're also important. But, really the fact that people are paying 30% more for gas and 15% more for their electricity and all the rest of it is probably the main driving force. Once again, though, my view is a huge driving factor of that has been government spending and the push for these radical climate policies and our adherence to net zero. I mean, if we the reason we're paying more for power is because we're installing expensive power. That is not misinformation. We should be providing the cheapest possible power we can, and we should be searching for resources and, as he says, drilling, baby, drilling all we can. It's as simple as that. Baby, drill. We should be. It's whatever we're doing, it should be for the good of Australia, not for the good of whatever ridiculous climate ambition we've got. With 1% or just over 1% of the world's emissions, quite wide is that we are cutting off our nose to spite our face with these projects. That's the main. That is the main game in town, despite us talking about very important issues.
Do you think the cost of living, I guess the cost of Oreos is important to this discussion? I know Albanese's been talking about the cost of Oreos, and I think the ACCC is going after supermarket giants for price practices. Do you think that will make a significant difference to Australians? Because Albanese has kind of taken the credit for it almost, the way he's been speaking about it. Is that the type of issues you're talking about, or is it more broader than that when you talk about?
Well, I mean, I just think if you make we've seen companies in South Australia just going broke because they can't afford their power bills. You know, like it's as simple as the same in Victoria. I'm sure. I mean, that is the main issue here. If you,
no, we're not going broke. We've been broke for a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's a serious thing, right? Yeah, it's serious.
Yeah, it's a massive issue. I mean, we had one of the orange juice companies out in the Riverland here in South Australia having, paying, I can't remember what it was, but something like an extra $1 million a year for their plant out there. A massive producing plant, requires a lot of energy per annum. I mean, this is crippling us. And I think people are starting to understand that. But, it's just, we are now, years away from fixing it. But it has to be fixed because it's destroying the fabric of our country. We don't manufacture anything anymore, hardly. We're not self-sufficient. If you were pushing an agenda to try and make us self-harm, this would be the one you'd push, wouldn't it? And it's working.
But are you questioning Greta Thunberg and her great achievements, scientific achievements in life? She's officially joined Hezbollah tonight, so she knows what's up.
Well, I hadn't heard that, but
she's saving the planet. One small rocket at a time.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Actually, the other thing I would say though about what's going on is the rollout of this digital ID world, which is facing us as well. I know everyone's across that, and once again, it's not cost of living. I get it, but it's pretty important. And
why is the digital ID so important?
Well, I mean, why it's important is because it's going to affect everything we do pretty soon. I mean, we're already seeing the beginnings of that. The talk of clamping down on social media for kids, Albanese said, well, we're going to do it, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. The reason for that, in my view, is that it's very hard to do without a digital ID. You can't tell people effectively who they are and whether they should be online if you don't know who they are and how old they are. So, you're just going to see the start of this. And, you guys have been across this for a long period of time, and most of your viewers would be as well. But when we start to see that and central bank digital currencies and a surveillance state, we're going to see, plus on top of that, if the misinformation bill is going to start, where people are just going to be we're just not free. We're just simply not free. So the digital ID is the spine of all of that. Without it, none of the other pieces function. And that passed, it got ramrodded through the Senate. I've got a bill up to repeal it. I mean, I don't think it'll ever see much light of day, but I just think we should be running a million miles from this. We should be, I don't see what the benefit of it is. I know what the stated benefits of them are, convenience and, safety. But when was the last government department you trusted with your data? My view is this is going to be a disaster. It's going to brick in, a form of control on Australians that they're not ready for. And you made a point earlier, Avi, about unintended consequences of bills, or that sort of thing. These things that come up and we don't know. The classic for mine is the Sexual Discrimination Act, which was amended back in 2013. No one ever thought that what would have seemed like a trivial, simple amendment to that, which removed the definition of men and women, would ever have trickled down the line and become what it's become today. So imagine that on steroids. That's the digital ID bill. Where this goes, nobody knows. This is
so. What is the bill?
Well, what it's going to do is create basically a framework for Australians to be identified online by a particular.
Will you have to be, according to the bill, based on the bill, you will have to be, or you can subscribe to it?
No, so the bill claims it's voluntary at the moment, and you guys lived through the era of voluntary COVID injections as well, and so you can rest assured that the mechanism
voluntary, but you just can't do anything without it.
That's it. You nailed it. So that's it. So it'll be voluntary, but you won't be able to use online banking, or you won't be able to shop online. Oh, and by the way, there are no shops on your main street anymore. So, but it's up to you. You do what you like. Don't just starve to death, or So, I mean, that's how it's going to be, and it is going to be effectively mandatory without a blink of an eye, and people will be tracked. They'll be able to be identified. What's the problem with that? People say, I don't do anything wrong. Well, the reality is being tracked and being judged depends on who's in power in the government of the day. And I don't
define what's wrong these days.
Yeah, well, that's right.
I learnt in COVID quite quickly that, I always consider myself as somebody that follows the rules and believes in law and order.
Right.
But then COVID came around, and I was like looking up to anyone that was willing to break them, and I was breaking them all the time myself. I was bending the rules as, unlike Rukshan, who's like, he's on his 14th jab now. He heard they're free. He's taken on my 10%
I'm waiting for the 15th now.
No, but in all seriousness, like my issue would not be, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I agree with you. Like, I wouldn't have a problem with it if you just were able to subscribe or not. But I don't believe them when they say that it's going to be voluntary, because we saw that COVID's the best example of that. And I just don't think, like, I'm personally somebody that's a bit lazy with these things, so I would probably do it because I like having everything on my phone. I'm willing to although on the other hand, I will think twice for those. I would consider those other issues because of, again, what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
But I just don't like the idea that things are mandatory.
But to play the devil's advocate, is there a place for some type of digital ID though? Because everything is being digitized. Almost all of our lives and services.
Well,
is it just
that's the argument.
Just the way it is? Yeah,
that's the argument, is that it's already here. You already do it. You've already got this, that, and the other. And I mean, that is true to a certain extent. Many of the government services already require that. That's effectively what a tax file number is. But what it isn't is something that has its tentacles out into all facets of your life. So, this is the sort of this is the umbrella effect of the digital ID across all facets of your life, all tied back together. For example, if you use some government site, whatever it might be, My Health or whatever, that doesn't have a downstream effect on your banking. Like maybe someone can tell me an example of how it does, but it doesn't seem to have any effect. Whereas the fear of what will happen with digital ID is that it will, you will walk across the street, the facial recognition camera will know it's you. It'll identify you immediately, and then it'll credit you or debit your bank account before you've hit the other side because you were jaywalking, whatever it might be. So I think it's the all-encompassing factor, the centralisation of control that people are rightfully worried about. I am. That's why I moved the repeal bill, and we've just got to do what we can. I think there's plenty of reason for people to be sceptical about.
I think I'm skeptical only for the fact that there is a bill. Like, if it was just genuinely something that was naturally occurring, a bit like they have the licenses now that you can have a digital version. Like, if you want it, you can get it, or you can have the old license. A bit like having a credit card to cash. I enjoy having a certain amount of cash as a backup. I want my license as a backup. I don't mind having a license on my phone to make it easier because I'm not walking. Now you take a photo of your license and you store it on your favorites photos so that you can show people, so you don't have to walk around with a physical license, and that can be hacked just as easily as anything as well. So I'm not so worried about that. What I find concerning about it is when they start putting in these bills which indicate to me that there's more to it, as in they do want to make it mandatory. They want to centralize all that information. Or am I just wrong? Do they need a bill to be able to implement anything? Like, does it have to be governed by some sort of legislation?
Yeah, well, in this instance, what it'll do is set up a sort of a commissioner for digital ID. So there's going to be an office which will regulate the rollout, management, the use, and all those sorts of things. But the point you make is a good one. I mean, the fact of let's talk about a central bank digital currency at the moment. We sort of almost already do that. I mean, I can't remember the last time, sadly, I pulled out a 20. And, it's just I just use my card and my phone and whatever now. So, that's not what we're talking about with the central bank digital currency. Of course, it's quite a different concept. But, we're sort of warmed up to it now as a result of using this system. But it's, you still can use cash if you want to. There's still that option. So, and that is very important. I mean, I would, if there were a way, I would love to see cash preserved because it is a mechanism of freedom. But I don't. That is not a simple solution. We don't want to be putting imposts on vendors. We don't want to be telling them they have to take cash all the time because there may well be problems with that. So, but these things are already they're kind of incrementally building as it is. This kind of electronic money, the sort of electronic transactions are, a bit the same.
I want to give a shout out firstly to Daniel, who at killthebill.com.au says to me, he's messaged me. I think he's Daniel. You're allowed to comment now because you've done it. So he's put it up there, killthebill.com.au. If you want to, there's a link there apparently for the submissions.
Get in and make a submission.
I'm gonna fact check him live on air to make sure that it's there. I can't spell. How do you spell kill? Killthebill.com.au. Let's do it. Let's test him live here. Boom. What does it give us? It's loading very slowly. This is I didn't pay my internet. Here we go.
No, there you go.
He's got here. Be heard. Make a submission. Australian Parliament by sending an email to the committee. Oh, there you go. Perfect. And he's even got the date. Thank you, Daniel, for that. So, guys, make sure to do it. Every submission counts, as you've heard here tonight. It's the numbers that actually... it's the numbers that count, right?
Yeah, it is. And also, people should take the time to tell their local member as well. I mean, I know that's tiresome and tedious, but it has to be done. People need to... tell their local members, whether it's a senator or a member of parliament, federally, what they think about this bill.
What if their local members, Lydia Thorpe? How should they frame it in the most appealing way to her?
They should. I can just see Rooksha. I'm not, but just a very quietly, very respectfully worded email would be the way to do that, in my view.
She will not read that. There needs to be buzzwords in the subject line.
She will.
The other shout out we've got to do, and Rukshan, this was you that keeps texting me about it. It's Benji's birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday, Benji! I have to say, Benji actually, it's one of the first times in my life I've received a message from someone saying, "Hey, it's my birthday today."
I know, Benji.
So
Benji's been spamming. Benji's been spamming me all week. Countdown to his birthday, and then he came into studio tonight, and he's like, "Have you got my present?" And I got him a can of Coke that came free with my delivery earlier.
So yeah, Benji, happy birthday, mate.
Happy birthday. Did you like your Coke?
Yeah.
Was it good Coke?
Fresh.
Birthday Coke.
Yeah.
It was good. All right, there we go. Benji's birthday has been announced live on the podcast. Daniel's back commenting, as you can see. Daniel said he didn't tell. Why didn't you tell Daniel about your birthday? You've been spamming me and Rukshan for a week, and Daniel didn't even know. He slept in today's Rebel News. We have it every day, a morning meeting, and it has to go on Canada's time, so it's at 7 a.m. Melbourne time, and Benji just didn't show up today. Just decided it's his birthday, and he was where he said he does work late sometimes. I drop the video at him at 4 a.m. I see him. He's sending it back to me. So he said he decided to sleep in for his birthday, and then he wanted an additional present on top of that. Do you guys understand what I have to put up with?
And if you're wondering why this feels forced, he actually told us we have to mention his birthday on the show. So
it's so true.
Senator Antic had to bear that as well.
Happy birthday, Benji. Happy birthday.
There you go, Benji. Look at that. That is a reel that you can cut up. You got a birthday from. We've certainly covered a lot tonight. It's been interesting. I am a little bit disappointed in the fact that I had about an hour lined up for Pseudo and Deeming. I was really excited for the gossip. You gave us nothing on that.
That's an hour free. You can now review the transcript tonight. Later on, you can go, sit in bed and flick through you get your highlighter out and highlight that sort of stuff.
I want to while I have you here, I might as well. I think I thought of something else we can get you to comment on. But let me Yeah, he gets nervous. I could see he gets he gets nervous.
I think he's thinking he's never going to come on this show.
I'm an open book. My life is an open book.
At least he's got answers, unlike Babette, like other people we know. There, the statement. Have you seen this statement today?
I actually can't read that
Okay.
on my screen.
Okay, so it's we need an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon as we need an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Let me see if I can. Oh, there you go. You got that. The global community is clear. This destructive cycle must stop. Lebanon cannot become the next Gaza. We need immediate ceasefire in Lebanon, as we need an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Are you across what's going on in the Middle East at the moment?
Yeah, I will. I mean, as much as anyone from this part of the world can be, I think.
What's your reaction to this statement?
Well, I don't know. I would say I'm a bit tired of politicians freelancing on foreign issues. To be honest, we've got enough issues that are happening from the Labor government here in Australia to worry about without needing to freelance. I understand Penny's the foreign minister, sure, but it's a matter for Israel and their security, frankly. And I mean, I've stood on the southern border of southern Lebanon, and seen with my own eyes the tunnels that get dug and into some of the settlements there, and security operations are what they are. So I would prefer our politicians to be concentrating on domestic issues, to be honest.
I do note that it is interesting, and everyone's become an expert in the last year on the Middle East. But what I find interesting is somebody like Penny Wong, who, for 11 months has been October 8, before Israel even started responding to the October 7 attack, Hezbollah started firing those rockets, and she hasn't called for a ceasefire in 11 months. What happened now? Why suddenly now does she call for that ceasefire? 100,000 displaced Israelis for a year now almost. What happened? Did it not matter then? And I just...
That's right. The same could be said in the southern part of the country as well. With the rocket fire coming out of Gaza. No one seems to talk about that. People of the place you know very well, Sderot there, but the kids have playgrounds which are basically bomb shelters. So, but no one ever talks about it. So,
it's always been like that, but in this particular case, like I couldn't believe it when I'm reading I can, because I know the Labor Party speaks from both sides of their mouth. Like, on one hand, they want to, on one hand, I think they do recognize that at least, they do recognize the truth on the ground, that Israel is a democracy, the only real democracy there, and they are fighting terrorist organizations. But on the other side, they also see the, Islamic community as a base for their voter base, the immigrant community. That's where they're trying to garner their vote. So they kind of turn to one camera. On Sky News, you have Albo condemning the anti-Semitism, and on the other hand, goes straight to and condemns Israel to the other side. But this one was just wild, because how can you put up a statement if you haven't done so in 11 months? Like, imagine that was happening in Australia. I would want whatever government, if it was happening in Australia, I would want whichever government was in charge. If some Indonesian terrorist organization was firing rockets, I would not want Australia to wait 11 months to respond. I hope when they do respond, they do something as cool as taking out all the pages, because that was pretty fun. But I would love to see that, but I wouldn't want them to wait 11 months, and no country is expected to do that. Why is there this double standard when it comes to the Labor Party? I've got to give Peter Dutton absolute credit, because on this issue, as popular or as unpopular, a bit like Trump, he doesn't care. He's focused on what he believes in. He's sticking to his convictions. He's not trying to win the popular vote on that issue. But Labor and the left worldwide, globally, have taken these weird positions.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this before when you were good enough to come on my podcast, Based, with Senator Alex Antic, which you can find at Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
We're going to have to cut that out. That's a competing show.
It's a very different market.
Intelligent people. Watch.
I was going to say short conversations, with nothing to do with John Pursuta specifically. So, but we talked about it, and I asked you that very question because you got a better read on it than I do about whether or not this has become outed. The left have outed their views on Israel or whether or not that's been simmering away and it's just burgeoned in recent times. Now they feel comfortable showing their hand, the left as a collective. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I will say that people will often drift towards Labor thinking that, they do this or that, but they cannot control the left flank of their party when it comes to this issue. And this is one of the issues. That the view on Israel is one of the weak spots, I would say, in Labor's, one of many, Labor's position. And I mean, you're right about the constant barrage of rockets that come in from both sides of the country. It's almost as though the international community just turn a blind eye to that every day, and as they do, because this just doesn't happen, at certain points. This happens every day. What do they get in Sderot? Something like 500 rockets land in that town every year. That's more than one a day. I mean, why are we not talking about that more? That's a question for the people that are taking the different side of the coin, as you just highlighted.
Yeah, and on that particular one, Hezbollah has fired 11,000 now, but it was 9,000 before Israel responded properly. 9,000 rockets, like insane. The rockets coming out of Gaza have almost stopped to zero at the moment.
And by the way, these are largely, I mean, some are not, but these are largely unguided missiles into civilian areas.
Almost all of them are unguided.
Yeah.
They literally blow up wherever they can.
Different to what we're seeing.
To targeted pager, yes, very, very different. In fact, I think I saw you, Ark, because I was going through it. I think the first time I actually met you in person was at Ark, wasn't it?
Correct.
That was in
about a year ago.
It was November, wasn't it?
Yeah,
October,
it was.
November. Yeah, it was right. Like I literally came. You were
straight from Israel.
It was a really bizarre time in my head because October 7 happened, and by October 10 we were already on a plane to Israel, and then straight from there I came to Ark, and that's where I met you. And it's all kind of a cloud to me, but I remember just because it was weird to see the world's reaction, and then I rocked up to Ark, which Ark was coming back to a bit of normalcy. There were normal people there. The right also lost the plot a bit since October 7, or parts of the right. But at least when I got to Ark and you just saw normal people that had shared conservative or libertarian values, they were just like, no, hold on, we get it. We're not gonna play this game. But yeah, it just struck me as a crazy time.
It was a crazy time. It was great. In actual fact, just to go back to the point about social media, not to blow wind up, both of your, sails, but during COVID, as an example, I used to watch Rukshan's live feeds of the rallies quite regularly on my phone, just walking around with a camera, people saying, g'day Rukshan or whatever. And then when it came to October 7, I couldn't find anything on the media as it was kicking off on that terrible night. So I was following Avi on Twitter. There you go. That's independent media doing what it does, and we can't lose that. We just simply can't lose it.
Well, I dare say, Rukshan, do you want to add anything tonight? You literally have not added anything to the conversation.
No, I mean this. I'm not an expert by any means on this in this particular issue.
Sri Lanka. What about Sri Lanka? New Marxist in charge.
Well, they say that he's more centre-left, not so much a Marxist. They used to be more so Marxist, and there was a bit of a...
Do you believe in Rukshan? You'd know more than
insurgency. He's linked to a previous insurgency in Sri Lanka by Marxists in the 80s and I think late 70s. So there is a bit of history there, but he's coming across more as a centre-left. That's how they represented him, and hopefully,
what do you
a lot
think?
of people...
We want the inside.
Oh, my dad's very happy that he won. So a lot of Sri Lankans are very happy that he's won. So across the board, he has a lot of support from people that are sick of corruption. There's a lot of corruption there, a lot of nepetism.
Is your dad is your dad politically engaged?
A lot of Sri Lankans are very politically engaged.
So where does he see himself on the political spectrum? This is interesting. You could take that back.
I'll see you guys later.
He has no time. He has no time for your family story, Rukshan. No, where does he?
No, look, I think he's more on the left side of politics. When you talk about left side of politics in Asia, you're not talking about the stuff that we're talking about here.
They're not
with,
confused about gender. The left.
No, it's not to do with that. It's more about economic, social issues, things like this. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting for Sri Lanka. I think it is a thriving democracy in many ways. So, and
yeah,
it
we
was
saw
a very
it thriving
safe
last year.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. But this time around, it was a very safe and clean election compared to, for instance, our friends in America. So it ran very well. They had a very orderly transfer of power, and everything's been done very smoothly. So in that sense, it's very good. So it'll be interesting to see what they do over the next couple of years and whether they can actually make a change. But as we hear all the time when it comes to things like socialism, wherever it's been tried, it's failed. So hopefully his policies don't go down that path, and it is more, more.
Maybe
more
Sri Lanka can do it better.
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. But on the issue of what you guys are talking about, Hezbollah and what's happening in Lebanon, obviously that's also very complicated. But I'm my personal perspective is we're seeing a lot of FAFO people who've messed around and they're finding out. I think there's been a lot of commentary that you're seeing online as well from people who are edging for a war between Hezbollah and Israel, and you're seeing their commentary now turn towards, how dare they defend themselves almost.
So that's the pattern we've seen throughout this whole war.
There's
those that celebrate
pattern of it. And I remember seeing lots of videos of people posting Hezbollah or different armies saying, they're going to come and do all this kind of stuff to Israel and all these kind of things. But when it comes to actually Israel defending itself and the pages going off and all this kind of stuff, you're seeing people cowering, and the tone is totally different. And I'm not advocating for war or anything like this. But I see a lot of the times what I'm seeing now is a country defending itself and using sophisticated means, targeted attacks to ensure that terrorism doesn't enter their country. And I think it's a legitimate use of a country's military and intelligence to do that. We would do that in Australia. I'd hope so. And I hope any other country that wants to protect their sovereignty engages in such behavior. But the broader issues of how that applies to Australia and how different people and communities are expressing themselves here, I think we're going to see more issues around that as well, because we're already seeing some people out on the streets. I'm not sure if they're holding Hezbollah flags, but it is a prescribed terrorist organization, and I think we have to be careful around what's allowed when it comes to that, because we can't have people glorifying terrorism, because it's become very common in Australia now to turn the other way when people are actually glorifying terrorist organizations.
Look at that. That's the most Rukshan has spoken on that issue, and
very good.
I can't wait to read his comment section. How much did Avi pay you?
No, it's not about
any of those people in the comments knew me for real, they'd know there's no way I paid a cent.
No, I don't even think you paid me to film your wedding.
That's not you and Benji, just complaints. Senator, can I ask you, have you ever had Sri Lankan chicken?
No, I haven't actually.
Mate,
I don't know if I have.
When are you in Melbourne next? We're going to organise Rukshan's wife to cook Sri Lankan chicken for all of us, or maybe mother-in-law.
We'll tell Senator Babette to come as well.
No,
No.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out. No way. I'm not hanging out with that guy.
No dice.
I don't get paid enough to do that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's already 22 weeks a year. It's, and he's got the office right across from me, as Rukshan knows.
Is it like?
He's like having Kramer. It's like he just barges in,
Do you see the smoke? Is the room full of smoke?
I try not to make eye contact. It's very dangerous.
Well, I've actually been there when he's barged in. He just comes with the camera and starts interviewing interviews with staff.
Yeah.
He wants us to do the podcast from Parliament. He's been bugging me about it. I just feel like I'm banned from enough places that going into Parliament with Babette is probably something just doesn't sit right.
No, your instincts are wise. I would counsel against it, to be quite honest. No, it is. It's honestly like having Kramer. Just sort of the door swings open. What's in the fridge? And I say, who's this guy? Like, what is going on? Why is he smoking a cigar?
I can so picture it. Does he smoke indoors there?
No.
Oh,
no. He threatens to. He's got.
I would have more respect for him if he did.
So would I. Would I.
Because he's a big talker. But I don't think he follows through. He's not like some people we know. Yeah. Well, it's been a riveting conversation. I wish Rukshan got more into the Sri Lanka stuff, because I'm left baffled. Basically, he's got left-wing family. The guy is far right based on everything that I read in the transcripts of this week's court case. So I've actually met your dad, haven't I?
Yes.
I have. I'm going to question him next. I'm going to say you outed him as a leftist. And we'll have a conversation about whether socialism is going to work in Sri Lanka. I'm excited actually for you to take me to Sri Lanka. Do you want to come on the trip? Rukshan has promised us to go there before Sri Lanka falls to socialism. Will you come? Should we bring Should we bring Babette in case we need to throw someone under the bus?
No. Oh, what is a sort of a
I don't know.
designated scapegoat?
Exactly. Yeah. Something happens and we just go. It was him.
Yeah. That's a great idea, and I changed my mind.
There we go. And on that note,
we would get away with this because this is now satire and parody. So we would this would be fun.
This whole episode has been satire and parody.
Whole episode.
Hold on, was it? Was it? I was
not.
I was hoping we were on the same ground. Parting words to the audience. We have about 5,252 across the platform.
5,000 people have been watching. I thought it was just the three of us.
Listen, Benji's got about 40 phones running, so I don't know how many of them are real, but yes.
Look, I think on the subject of the misinformation bill, just that people just need to get in there and tell the committee what they think about it with the submission. So I'm really glad you put that up because we don't want to be sidelined. I mean, frankly, this is a burgeoning area, and it would be shocking to see this impost on free speech after what is a fairly small amount of time that we've all become used to podcasts. I don't turn my TV off anymore. I went through a period 2 or 3 years ago and it's a bit weird, but taking photos of people whose aerials were pulled out at the wall and saying, "You legend, you've done it well." I don't listen to any of it anymore. I haven't turned on the nightly news. I barely read the local newspapers. I get all my information through social media, podcasts, Twitter, and whatever else, which might explain a lot. But it's just critical and important. I feel like I'm better informed as a result of that than I would ever have been just relying on the old mainstream news. So we have to protect this. We have to make sure that we have our voices heard on this one.
We'll leave the lines open for about a few more minutes. So guys, if you want to ask the senator a question in the next few minutes on X, any of the X pages that show on YouTube or Facebook, throw your question in there and I'll bring it up on screen. And either the senator or Rukshan can answer them. I'm not answering questions. I'm already off the clock, so
just on Sri Lanka. I was just reading one of the comments, and it's interesting. It's the first time that the major parties have actually lost an election. So, we keep talking about the major.
So it's not even a major party. It's not a major party.
No.
You should have started with that because
last time his actual government or his party only had 3 seats in the government, so this time he's the president. So it's a major shift in the country.
Imagine.
So there is hope, perhaps, for countries like Australia, for minor parties and smaller groups to get up one day.
Do you really want Babette to be prime minister though? All right, let's see if we've got any questions, guys. You've got a couple of minutes. If you want to put your questions on any of those, I will put them on screen. How are you traveling? I don't even know if that's who that's directed at. Maybe that's at Rukshan. How are you traveling, Rukshan?
Traveling to Sri Lanka or just in general?
Probably Sri Lanka, because they're probably not going to have any planes left soon.
I'm doing good.
Here we go. A question: term limits for senior execs. Senator, what do you feel about term limits?
Term limits for public servants. Actually, that's not a bad idea. I mean, one of the issues, of course, is they tend to rotate through different departments. So, you'd end up getting one department, one at another, and there's sort of almost a career in the public service. I would honestly, if it were me, I would just like to see less of them. Not anyone in particular, but just less of them. I think there is
less politicians.
Yeah, less politicians and less bureaucrats.
Okay, so hold on. I'm just going to follow up question. So between Pauline Hanson, Lydia Thorpe, and Babette, you've got to knock 2 off. Who are you keeping?
Okay, well, I'm going to start with Senator Ralph Babette. Well, he's really copying it tonight. I really like Ralph. I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm not getting into that. I'll stop at 1.
So who we keep?
Watching. Sorry, Ralph.
Who are we keeping? Who are we keeping?
He got rid of Babette and he kept the two.
He kept two of them. He kept Lydia Thorpe over Babette.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. I'm with you. I would actually vote along those lines. I don't know what this means, Rukshan. It's to you. Sri Lanka politics segment of a regular feature.
Definitely not. No, I have no idea to talk in depth about Sri Lankan politics. But I'll actually put a question to you, Senator Antics. You got a picture of Trump behind you. Trump or Kamala coming in November.
Like who's going to win? Prediction.
Who's going to win? Prediction.
Oh, well, I mean...
one you can predict on.
I mean, I personally, I think Trump's miles ahead on the polls. I think he's comfortably ahead, and many of the swing states, all the respectable polls would suggest that. But what actually happens, that's a different story. I've got very little confidence that he's going to be in a position to win for all sorts of reasons. I mean, we saw the Hunter Biden laptop story last time, which was buried by Twitter. That in itself, we know from the Twitter files scandal now that it was done at the behest of the intelligence services. I mean, those sorts of things are what worries me at this point. And look, people can rest assured. I spoke to Victor Davis Hansen on my podcast, another one, and he outlined the case for why Trump would be.
You can say the podcast name again. It's all right.
Based. It's called Based with Senator Alex Antic. And thank you, Avi. And he did actually make the case for why Donald Trump is a friend of Australia. So you're going to hear all sorts of other stories of it. I think it's a very good result. I hope he wins. But I am worried about what will happen.
Here we go on for you, Alex. Any view on gambling?
Oh,
problems.
That's a very broad question. I mean, they're terrible. I mean, I think,
it's interesting that they ask you that after a night where we've made you bet on several issues off the back of betting over who's going to win the election.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, the gambling problems are shocking. There you go. I don't know what else to add to that.
Where do you stand on coal?
I would put it everywhere if it was the cheapest form of power, which it is.
I think the next one is actually... Is the Liberal Party into that, or is that just your personal...
That's my view. The policy, of course, is to explore nuclear power, which I also support. I think that's great. And to have a broad, divergence of power sources of all sorts. We used to say we're technology agnostic, which I also support. I think that's great. But ultimately, coal-fired power is cheap. And it's done more to get people out of poverty and make the country prosperous than almost anything. Let's just use it while we have to. I mean, the modern coal power is not what people tell you it is. I mean, there's a lot of very efficient coal-fired power, which is not... And by the way, China are building 30 at any one given time, 30 new coal-fired power stations, emitting something like 30 to 40% of the world's emissions. Why are we cutting off our nose to spite our face? I mean, it's all very well to be a global leader, but aren't we meant to be doing what's good for this country, not what's, good for someone else's bottom line? I just don't understand.
Good for Greta.
Yeah.
This one is more of a statement to Rukshan. I think it's somebody having a go at Sri Lanka there. Here, I think... Ask this clown, dies he work or talk to Pauline Hanson? Do you die? I'm assuming the clown they're talking about is Rukshan.
No, that must be me.
Oh, you're the clown.
I would assume.
There's nothing funny about you.
No, that's true. It's been said before. I do talk to her, but I do not work for her.
Oh, is that does? They just already dies.
So, yeah.
Okay. So you don't work for her?
No.
You all work for the Zionists, so really you all work for me.
That's right.
Hold on, what's this one?
That's got to get out of context.
Yeah, 100%. I can't wait for Alex. You have strong opinions on the Israel-Hamas conflict. What is your position on Ukraine? All can of worms here.
Oh, what a can of worms. Look, we're all very focused on overseas issues. I'm just more interested in what's happening here in Australia, to be honest. We got enough problems here at the moment. I sort of don't get involved in as many foreign wars as I can. I think they're a powder keg, you know.
Have you heard
put
of
up the comment that said RV is a clown? I think you're controlling the comments. So
Yeah,
all
well,
the
mate,
negative, bad comments about you don't go
You
up
clipped
there.
RV out.
Take control, take back control of the comments, and you can dictate what goes on the screen. Be careful, I'm going to add more that are anti-Rukshan. Don't play around with me. I've got the power. Have you heard of the New World Order? Have you heard of that? It's yes.
Yeah, yes, I've heard people say it. Yep.
Does it mean anything to you?
I mean, I know what it means, but I don't know what the context. That's a sort of a very broad question there. Have you heard of?
I know. I feel like our audience need to be told to make them really. They need to be a bit more specific. Yeah, like some of these are like. We'll give one more question. Let me find one more, and we will shut up. I don't know what this one is. Here, this one. Alex, when are we likely to see proper regulated vaping model put into place here in Oz? Does that have anything to do with you?
Not really. I must admit, vaping is not something I've really ever.
How does Babette feel about it? He doesn't care. Cigar.
We talked a lot about Raph tonight, haven't we? It's come up a lot. I don't know. He's more of a cigar man. Look, I don't know about vaping. I really don't have any kind of feel for the regulations around it. But you know, people should.
Rukshan just hacked into my computer and put up a comment finally that he wanted.
Finally, a decent comment. Avi, why are you a jerk?
I was born this way, and if you have a problem, you know where to go. On that note, guys, thank you firstly, Senator, for joining us tonight. It's been amazing, a bit underwhelming when it came to John Pizzuto, but riveting on all the other issues. Would you like a final word to the people joined us? How many have we got now? 5, 5, 6, 7. Go for it.
Increasing. Well, look, Avi, you know, thanks for having me on. I've been meaning to actually come on at some point. I was hoping to be in Melbourne at some point, but it just hasn't happened to sit there in the studio with you. But it's been great. It's been good fun, and you know, keep up the good work. You know, where are you off to next? Is probably more my question.
We're not going to talk. I do have a really exciting secret mission about to take place that I can't talk. I can't give the details yet because I've learnt from my experiences that when I announce my plans, okay, so one time I announced my plans, I ended up in literal FBI custody and deported, and then the next time I was banned by the Prime Minister of New Zealand from entering. So I've taken those little lessons, and I've decided that from now on the plans will come on the day. But I do have something really exciting coming up. That in the next couple of weeks the audience will find out about. Rukshan, would you like any final words, or we could probably call them starting words?
Avi's going to Sri Lanka, so you can let the Sri Lankan government know to block access.
I am becoming the new. Have I got the head roll?
But no,
yet?
thanks guys
India.
for joining us for another episode. Thank you, Senator Alexander. Thank you so much for your insights from the halls of power in Canberra. For a episode catch up, I think the opposition.show website, you'll be able to watch this back later on. Are we still doing audio versions of this, Avi?
Yeah, they'll go. Audio versions go on there as well. Videos up there already. And guys, remember, if you want to find the details for the submissions, killthebill.com.au. It's all up there. But that's it. Thanks for spending this lovely Thursday evening just before the public holiday, where don't talk to me after 2 p.m. tomorrow because I will be blind drunk with Rukshan.